Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, our little group out here at Halekou has students from the islands and California, Chicago, and now London. So we should have a very interesting unfoldment. And first of all, we're going to touch on these questions that have been given to us. And the first is it necessary to be a state of cosmic consciousness before spiritual consciousness is realized? There is no yes or no to that question, because the place where cosmic consciousness leaves off and spiritual consciousness begins is beyond measurement. And how much of spiritual consciousness is embodied in cosmic consciousness and vice versa is immeasurable or indefinable. Cosmic consciousness, as we understand it in the infinite way, is attunement with that consciousness, that universal consciousness, which is the source of knowledge. Out of cosmic consciousness comes all of art, literature, music, invention, discovery, and even the spirit of adventure that sends a Christopher Columbus across the seas, or a bird, an admiral bird to the South Pole and the North Pole, Admiral Peary, Scott. But could the great works of music or art or architecture come from a consciousness that did not have a great measure of the spiritual in it? And the answer must be no. I doubt that you could even get anything as mechanical as bridge building without a trace of the spiritual in it. I mean the original thought, design, architecture, invention. For instance, the man who designed and was responsible for the building of Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco, was asked how he accomplished it, because every bridge builder in the world had been called upon, every one of note, and each one, after due reflection and examination, had said that a bridge could not be built there. And yet here came a man who said it could, and he did it. And then he was asked how, and his answer was, oh, well, I never touch anything without prayer, and it was revealed to me in prayer. Now, as mechanical a thing as bridge building, how could it be done without some of the spiritual nature being there? Now, of course, Albert Einstein was a mathematician. And ordinarily you wouldn't think of a mathematician in connection with spiritual. You would think of it in a cosmic light, but not spiritual. And yet he was the very man who said that you can only go so far with mathematics, and then you come to a jumping off place when you must land in the intuitive or spiritual realm. And our General Electric friend, the great inventor, Steinmetz, who of all people was certainly cosmic, inventive genius, but who nevertheless left as his last message that the great discovery of this century would be in the spiritual realm. So cosmic applies more or less to that area of consciousness from which knowledge comes, and the spiritual consciousness from that area of consciousness from which the spiritual wisdom or mystical awareness comes. But there must be some intermingling, and therefore I doubt that there is a cosmic consciousness and a spiritual consciousness, but rather that these represent degrees of consciousness, and where one is found, the other will usually be found in some degree, although there are some people of cosmic consciousness who do not seem to have a trace of the spirit about them. But I don't know that that would really be true if you could dig down under their skin. Number 2, when you said, I is the only word that cannot be objectified, the nature of God as one was more fully recognized. Is it possible to realize more of the nature of God from this standpoint, or would the personal sense of I confuse? Now let us get this straight. We are discussing not the nature of I, not the nature of God, but the identity of God. Not the nature. The identity. What is God, or who is God? Well, who, that's out, isn't it? We can't have that at all, because we know that God is not a person in that sense. Then what is God? When you turn to Scripture, you find definitions of God. John says, God is love. The Hebrew Testament says, God is law, and God is the lawgiver. And God is life. To know Him aright is life eternal. Therefore, God is life. And we find references to spirit and to soul. As you turn to modern metaphysics, you find other synonyms for God. One of these is mind, one is principle, one is substance, one is cause. Now, the word mind can't be God, because the word mind is an idea or a concept which you have formed, or which has been formed and you have accepted. The words life, truth, love, spirit, soul, these can't be God. If these words were God, this whole room would be aflame with illumination. There wouldn't be any disease in it, any discord in it, there wouldn't be any male or female in it. If those words were God, this whole room would be ablaze. Because all we're doing here is bringing those words here, announcing them, declaring them, affirming them, and nothing's happening. So they can't be God. There isn't any word that you can think of that isn't the effect of the thinker. Therefore, the thinker must be greater than any word he can think, or voice, or declare, or write. Since this is true, I must be greater than any thought I can entertain, any concept I can hold or form, any belief or theory that I can accept. I must be greater than these. Because regardless of what word I utter, even if it's G-O-D, there was an I that uttered it, and there was an it. Even after I've uttered it and it's gone and you can't see it or hear it anymore, I still remain. I must be greater than any thought I entertain. I must be greater than any concept that I could form, any theory that I could formulate. In other words, any word for God would still leave me and it. Therefore, the only word that obliterates everything but itself is the word I. I. That is the final word behind which you cannot get. Because I declares I, me, myself, the thinker, the beer, the doer, the consciousness, the cause. Therefore, there is no word that will declare God except the word I. Because any other word is I declaring it. And the I that declared it or created it or thought it up or invented it or discovered it would be greater than any of the discoveries. It is for this reason that Moses, although he was an important member of the court of Pharaoh, was still nothing and nobody. And later, when he was tending flocks on the hills, he still was nothing. But the moment that he had the realization, I am, he became a figure that has come down through 5,000 years of history and remains almost, you may say, second only to the name of Jesus Christ. I don't mean second in importance, I mean second in world renown. What made him a Hebrew leader, a savior of the Hebrew people? The word I. The recognition that I am that. Now, he understood the nature of that word to such an extent that he forbade its use and forbade that it be taught to the people. It was reserved only for the high priests, and they were never allowed to voice it except on one day a year, and then they had to be hidden in the Holy of Holies, in the inner sanctuary of the temple, before they could voice it even. And nobody was allowed to be there to hear it. Why? Because Moses already knew that we as humans use the word I falsely. We use it to identify Joel, Bill, Mary. And therefore, if we were told that I am God, we would translate that into Joel as God, Mary as God, Bill as God. See that? And then the first thing you know, we'd have an I am movement flapping its wings. And then religion would be lost again. And so it was that the word I was held as a sacred, secret word. Which set the priests apart, because they knew the truth. And that's what made them priests. That's what constituted their priesthood. The knowledge of their true identity, and that with this knowledge they could minister to the needs of those who came to them, because anyone who knows I can feed the multitudes, can supply them, can support them, can heal them. Anyone who knows I am can immediately stop concern for his own welfare and give his entire attention to feeding flocks. Feed my sheep, says the master. Feed my sheep. Why should they feed a sheep? They didn't have any storehouses or barns. No, but they had I. Now, when we come to the building of King Solomon's temple, we find that he had this secret. And he promised that all those who worked on the building of King Solomon's temple would, when they finished the temple, receive the password which would enable them to travel in far places and command a master's wages. And we learn that that password was I am. Certainly, anyone who knows I am will never have to look to man whose breath is in his nostril for anything. Anyone who realizes I am can travel any place they want in the world, with script or without script. It makes no difference. Everything they need will be provided for them as they go along out of their withinness. They don't have to depend on charity. They don't have to depend on benevolence or goodwill of anybody, or pull or influence. They carry with them everything. Now let's see the proof of it in the teaching of Jesus. Master, shall we go to the city and buy thee some meat? No, I have meat ye know not of. Do you want bread, wine, water? I am bread, wine, water. Do you fear death? I am the resurrection. I am life eternal. He is only repeating what Moses knew, what Elijah knew, what Solomon knew, what every Hebrew priest knew, the highest order of priests. I am. Beside me, Isaiah said, there is no God. I know not any. I am. Now, Jesus explained that to his disciples when he said, I and my Father are one, yet the Father is greater than I. In other words, the invisible part of me is greater than the visible. Or I might say, I is greater than Joel, because Joel is fed by I. But Joel is fed by the I that I already am. It isn't another word invented. It isn't another power or presence or character in time or space. It's the I that I am that feeds Joel, whether in the form of material for books or lectures or talks or food on the table. It makes no difference. It all comes from I, no matter how it gets here. Elijah proved that when there was no other way, the ravens would come carrying food to him. Or that he could wake up in the morning and find cakes being cooked on the coals and on the stones in front of them. The master refused to turn stones into bread. I don't have to work miracles. I, Jesus, don't, because I of Jesus is the bread. It doesn't have to be made. It doesn't have to come from somewhere. I am bread. Now, in India, before a person receives their full degree of Swami, they have to go out for at least 1 or 2 years with a begging bowl. And they carry nothing with them but their robe and their sandals. In some cases they may carry an extra robe tied to their back, and a begging bowl. And that's all. And they have to sometimes cross all of India, east to west or north to south, on foot, or in any way that's offered them, and prove that they can survive that year or two without having to work, without having to do anything except be. They don't beg. They have a begging bowl, but not to beg. They merely carry it. Their consciousness has to draw to them those willing to supply them. Even if they travel on a train, they're not allowed to buy a ticket. No, they either must get on the train without a ticket, or somebody must be responsible for giving them the ticket before they get on. But they are not supposed to draw on yesterday's manna. Now, I doubt that they, any but the very most spiritual of them, could get away with that if they tried it in the United States. Because there's 2 kinds of people we don't like: beggars and holy people. And our rules are very strict, that if you don't have your car fare, you go to jail. And it doesn't make any difference how holy you are. But I do believe that if one were of sufficient spiritual height and their motives were completely pure, that they could even travel back and forth across this country. In fact, one man did. A friend of mine, who had been a millionaire in the silk manufacturing business, and when Japan started shipping silk to the United States in the early 1920s, he went bankrupt along with the rest of the silk industry. And he was a very good student of Christian Science, and it was at the point anyway where he thought he was going to be a practitioner. But when this bankruptcy came to him, then he was really decided that's what he was going to do. He wanted no more business. But he decided that he must first prove this truth. And so he liked gardening. So he went down and he put on his old gardening trousers and coat. And he went to his wife and said, I'm leaving. I'm taking a trip around the United States. And I'm taking a $2 bill. And if I get back home after going to California and back and still have $2 in my pocket, I'm going to be a Christian Science practitioner. And if I don't, I'm going back to business. When he got to Chicago, he was able to finish the rest of his trip in the 20th Century Limited. And he did. He became one of the very finest Christian Science practitioners they ever knew. Now, he had learned the lesson that he is dependent on I. There is one step further than I, but the only thing is that at that step there's no words to describe it, because we can do without I. Only there you have no word to describe what's left. If you could, you'd be describing what I am, or what I know myself to be. Do I know anything about myself? Nothing. Nothing. And that is why the cloud of unknowing is based on not knowing. Not on ignorance. It doesn't say ignorance. It doesn't even say not knowing. It says unknowing. That means unknowing everything you know. And when you come to a place of unknowing everything you know, you arrive at being, but without the words to say it. Or you've arrived at the I that I am without the words to say it. See that? It is as if somebody were to say, I have a headache, give me help. If you have arrived at the right place in consciousness, you wouldn't answer, because there's nothing you could say and nothing you could think that would help them. You certainly don't know anything that would help anyone or heal anyone. I haven't learned anything that would. Therefore, at the top of your spiritual awareness, you not only wouldn't answer outwardly, but you wouldn't even answer silently. There'd be a complete non-response, a vacuum. And into that vacuum, the voice of the Lord would utter itself. Not necessarily audibly, not necessarily so that you would be aware of it, but you wouldn't have to be. You're not aware of the force of nature that's in that plant out there, and you don't have to be. It's going to keep on growing. Even after the whipping it's taken from the storm, a few weeks from now, there'll be no signs of it left. It'll be completely resurrected. And you still don't know what's doing it. You still have no feeling of any life force going through that tree. You don't have to have. So it is. The ultimate of the correct letter of truth is when you don't use a word like God, because God is something I am declaring. where you're left with nothing but I. And more descriptive, I am. And that's enough. That's enough. I am. If reason wants to be satisfied and say, what am I? And I can go ahead and say, I am life, or I am love, or I am truth, or I am bread, I am wine, I am water, I am the resurrection, I am food, clothing, housing, transportation. I include, I embody all of these in that infinite word I. I is the embodiment of everything necessary for my unfoldment, so that if I stepped out of this door just this way, and with another thing, I could walk wherever I want, around the world, and reach there. As long as I didn't look out here hoping somebody would pick me up, or somebody would give me $1 or a ticket, or as long as I held to I am. I am, I am. I am life eternal. I am omnipotence. I am omnipresence. I am here, I am there, I am everywhere. I already am. But the minute I entertain the belief that I must go somewhere, that is when I stop. That's when my progress stops. In the same way, if I think I must be healed, if I think I must be prospered, then I'm out of the spiritual realm. Then I'm out. I'm back again in the mortal dream. Because once the mortal dream is broken, I know that I am. All being. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and I am that Lord. I am here, and I am there, and I am everywhere. I am that I am. And all I have to do is sit by the side of a road until somebody picks me up, or in some way or other the next step is provided, or the next step, or the next step. Always because of the realization that I am. This place where I am is holy ground. Not getting over there to that place. This place where I am is holy ground. I am about my Father's business. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not when I reach Jerusalem or Mecca. I am about my Father's business. I am. I already am. Now, the more we dwell on that I, and then drop it, the sooner it begins to teach us this. All that I'm saying, if you were to repeat it, is just pump priming. The time must come when this flows out from within, not repeating it up here in the head, but when it declares itself, when it flows out from within you. Now, the subject of the nature of God is entirely different. The reason that one of the important parts of the Infinite Way teaching is the nature of God is that everyone has been mistaught as to the nature of God, and therefore is mistaught as to prayer, therefore is mistaught as to how to contact God. For instance, if you pray to God for anything, it can only be out of your ignorance of the nature of God. Because if you knew the nature of God as infinite intelligence, what would be left for you to tell it? What would there be that the infinite intelligence does not already know? Or, if you knew that the nature of God is love, why would you have to ask it for anything? For the nature of love is giving, providing, caring. Therefore, the nature of God is a providing God, a giving God. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's the nature of God. Nobody asks God for anything. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Because it is the nature of the Lord to be a shepherd. To care, to protect, to supply. If you knew that the nature of God was omnipresence, you'd know that God was closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Why would you have to go to a church? Why would you have to go to Mecca? Why would you have to go to Boston or Rome or Jerusalem? Is there any place where God is not? No. So whether you were walking in the woods or out in a rubber boat in the ocean or lost in the desert, what difference would it make if you knew the nature of the God as omnipresence? And if you further knew the nature of God as omnipotence, the all-power, what difference could it make to you where or why you were, or how? As long as God is the all-power, you don't have to fear any other power. Therefore, no one is going to learn how to pray or how to give a treatment unless they know the nature of God. Of course, they won't know what it is that makes God contact. Do you see that? Knowing the identity of God as the very eye of my being is one thing. It still remains necessary to know the nature of God in order to keep from praying to it. See that? Or praying upon it. We will take this one next as 3. What should a serious infinite way student's attitude be about nutrition and vitamins? Well, since God is intelligence and God is love, then attitude would have to be whatever is intelligent and loving. It would mean that a student should, insofar as possible, well, let's put it this way first. In the ordinary sense, take no thought what you shall eat or what you shall drink. Whatever's set before you, eat it and drink it. But there is a secondary consideration, and that is that in our modern way of living, everything that's put in front of you isn't food, even though it is dressed up as food on the table. For instance, about a year ago, no, it might have been 2 years, I'd forgotten, I think it was 2 years ago, an attempt was made by the largest makers of bread, pies, and cakes in England. There's one big firm that's nationwide over there that does most of the bread, pie, and cake baking for the whole nation. And they try to expand into Scotland, and the government forbade them to come in there with their products. Why? All of their products are made from American recipes. And they want none of it. They said, our people have to live on that stuff and be fed. You've taken the food out of it. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. If you eat a lot of bread, you just can't afford to depend on the bread that served you here, because our bread isn't food. It's bulk, but it's not food. So it is that while when you go out to restaurants you eat what's set in front of you, because it can't harm you, it isn't a power, but neither would you want to go spend your whole life eating that which isn't even food. So that in your home you would have the intelligence to use bread or pies or cakes that were baked of flour or substances that had food value. So it is. You already know that when you go into restaurants that most of the vegetables you eat are cooked out. You know there can't be much food. The food value is left in the water in the cooking pans. You know that when you cook in your own home, you cook your vegetables for a very short time, very quickly, and you serve them as promptly as you can, and the food value is still in them. Well, insofar as possible then, it's wise to give thought to seeing that food is served that way. Then what I'm saying is that to the extent that intelligence is given you, eat intelligently. Eat what you know, what you have definite knowledge is good for you. And that doesn't mean to make a fetish of it and refuse to eat a piece of pie or a piece of cake or a donut if you like it, but to keep the bulk or the major part of your eating on as intelligent a level as you can. On the subject of vitamins, if you find that you are not getting enough of certain vitamins in your food, what difference does it make whether you take it in the form of food or in the form of a capsule or a pill? It's the same food that comes from the same place. As long as we tabernacle in the flesh, we will have to eat, and what we eat will determine our comfort. It was proven generations ago that sailors that didn't have certain foods got scurvy. The minute they were supplied with that food, when they got on shore again, the scurvy disappeared. We know that if you don't eat certain foods, certain diseases of the body come from malnutrition. A report recently that was issued on the mainland said that more than 20% of all of the hospital beds in the United States were filled with people suffering from malnutrition. Now that did not mean poverty-stricken people, because poverty-stricken people can't get into our hospitals. They're not that cheap. Do you understand that? Malnutrition means the body being deprived of certain foods that it needs. And you can bet that these 20% of the population are all people who are well fed. But they are not well fed from the standpoint of having quality food, regardless of quantity. So if you do know of some particular deficiency in your system that you can't supply with food, personally I can't see the harm of making that up with vitamins or minerals. Because the only alternative you have is if you find you haven't got enough, let us say, of whatever it is that vitamin A is supposed to do, you'll have to eat more of the food with it in. Well, there you are. I know that I get a great deal of joy, and I'm sure other benefit, from drinking carrot juice. I could get the same benefit from carrots, but I'd probably have to eat 20 of them, and that isn't possible. Do you see what I mean? But I can drink the juice of 20 carrots easily, quickly. I can't see that it makes much difference whether I take the whole carrot or whether I take the carrot juice, as long as what I'm after is the food value of that carrot, or the food value of a steak, or the food. And the question comes in there too, should you eat a steak? I don't see that it makes any difference whether you eat the steak or whether you eat the cheese or you eat whatever it is that gives you the food value. Whichever you like, that's the one to do. Naturally, your spiritual evolution will cut down on the amount of meat that you eat, and will even make times when you can't eat any. Well, you don't violate that. When that time comes, you don't eat any, or you cut down. Then when you can eat it, you eat it again if you wish. If you don't, there are substitutes. But you can't fool yourself. Regardless of what you're doing, you're after that particular substance of that food. And so does everybody that eats. Eats because of the particular substance of that food, because their body needs it. Now, first of all, I think we will meditate. Coming back to that subject of the eye, do you see now how you could meditate and take that word I in here and look at it, ponder it, I, and realize I am closer to me than breathing. I am closer to me than my own hands and feet. And this very I that I am in the midst of me is mighty. This very I that I am is the bread of life, the wine, the water, the center from which flows my whole daily human experience. The issues of life, of harmony, peace, joy, dominion, flow out from within me, affecting my world, my body, my home, my human relationships, family, business, community. I, all power, is embodied in the I that I am. I need not fear what mortal man can do to me. I need not fear what mortal circumstance or condition or disease can do to me. For I am the embodiment of God power. I embody God power, God being, God presence, God dominion. God gave me dominion over all that is, in the sky, in the air, on the water, on the earth, beneath the waters. I embody dominion. I am dominion. I have dominion. Do I need anything? I have meat the world knows not of. I have it. I embody it. I include it in the I that I am. I can feed the multitudes, heal, comfort, and help the multitudes, because God has given me dominion. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me. The whole presence and power of God constitutes the very I that I am. My very being is made up of God. God constitutes the I that I am. And by this relationship has given me dominion. There is no power then to act upon me from outside of me. No power of weather or climate or food, infection, contagion, economics, philosophy, theology. There are no powers external to my being. All power is embodied in the I that I already am. And because it is God power, it is gentle and good. And it flows out from me as a benediction to everyone who reaches my consciousness, who touches my consciousness, be they friend or foe, saint or sinner. I do not need to have desires, for I have within the I that I am the power of fulfillment. There can be no unfulfilled desires, or wants, or needs, for I embody the power of resurrection, the lost years of the locust. And if you meditate that way for some weeks or months or maybe even years, do you not see where you will reach the state of consciousness where that will no longer be necessary? You will just sit down and instantly feel that Spirit of the Lord God upon you, and there will not have to be any words or thoughts, because the experience of it will be there. And when the experience is there, you don't need any words about it or any thoughts about it. All right, that must be clear.